So you're welcome, Brian.
Okay, so I hope you can see my screen. So welcome again to our informative session. I want to start with some quick fire, just to pick your brains on these concepts, generally in cybersecurity and also threat intelligence. So we can engage in our chat box. So the question is, what is the weakest link in cybersecurity? What is this weakest link in cybersecurity? We can just engage in our yes, humans, Alvin. Yes, so humans are the weakest link in cybersecurity. Yeah, the second question that I have to pick your brain on is which country in the world has the highest concentration of threat actors? Which country in the world has the highest concentration of threat actors? This one is in line with what we are doing, threat intelligence. Yes, we have one country which has the highest concentration of threat actors. Anyone in the chat box? Yes, anyone? Oh, Russia is a good try. Actually, not India. So the country that has the highest concentration of threat actors is China. Interesting. China has the highest concentration of threat actors in the whole world. And now the third question to pick your brain on is we are narrowing down to our continent, Africa. So which country in Africa has the highest ranking in cybercrime index? Which country in Africa has the highest ranking in cybercrime index? Not Kenya. Yes. Nigeria has the highest ranking in cybercrime index. You can remember the famous Yahoo boys and um, some other pig fattening schemes that are always uh, perpetrated by most of these Nigerians. So that is it for yes, yes, and a lot of scammers and a lot of scammers. Yes, so that is it for quickfire. Let me just share the slides so that can continue with our session. Just a minute. Okay. Yes, so let's go straight to our presentation today. Our presentation is threat intelligence. Uh, yes, threat intelligence and vulnerability management. So we will start by defining various concepts when it comes to the whole topic of vulnerability management. So the first concept we are going to define is a vulnerability. So a vulnerability is essentially a weakness or flaw in a computer system, software, network, or network that can be exploited by a threat actor to gain unauthorized access, steal data, or even disrupt operations. On the other end, a vulnerability management is a process which involves identifying weaknesses or flaws in an organization's cyber computer systems, software, or applications, and taking steps to fix or patch those weaknesses before hackers can exploit them. So the program or the process which helps us to identify and mitigate those vulnerabilities, the process or the program is called vulnerability management. So in vulnerability management, we have what we call vulnerability management process, which is a systematic approach to identifying and mitigating vulnerabilities in an organization. So it generally reduces the attack surface and also addresses the vulnerabilities before they can be exploited. So there are various steps that are employed in this vulnerability management process. The first one being discovery. At this process, we identify the vulnerabilities in the assets and systems in an organization. The second step is assessment. Now, after identifying, we have to detect the vulnerabilities or assess them using various automated tools or even manual testing. After we have assessed our vulnerabilities, the third step is now to prioritize, to rank vulnerabilities based on their severity and also the potential impact. Of importance in this process is that while we are prioritizing our vulnerabilities, we have to follow the CIA triad, which is the basis of most cybersecurity functions of confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So let's say a vulnerability has affected all those three aspects of the CIA triad. That vulnerability is ranked highly as of various serious or critical impacts to an organization. Now that will help the organization when it comes to remediating that particular vulnerability. The fourth step is remediation. So here we implement various multifaceted strategies, such as patch management, secure configurations, and also access control measures to be able to now mitigate the identified vulnerabilities. After we have successfully mitigated those vulnerabilities, we now verify to ensure that the vulnerabilities have been resolved. Then after we have verified that we have indeed resolved the vulnerability, we now employ monitoring process to continuously detect and manage new vulnerabilities. So that is essentially the steps involved in a vulnerability management process. Yes. So in discovering vulnerabilities, we have quite a number of approaches that organizations implement. So organizations typically use a combination of methods and tools to discover vulnerabilities. Some of those methods and tools include, of course, we have vulnerability scanning. So here is where organizations employ scanning tools to regularly scan networks, systems, and applications for known vulnerabilities. So vulnerability scanners scan for known vulnerabilities. So they are not that proactive to really identify, let's say, undiscovered vulnerabilities. The second method that is employed is manual testing. So sometimes scanning may miss to identify some vulnerabilities. So additional tests should be performed. And now here is where we can employ manual tests like penetration tests to be able to simulate our environment with the penetration testers to see if we can be able to find other vulnerabilities that were maybe missed by our vulnerability scanners. Another method that is employed is security audits. Now, when it comes to security audit, the main rationale behind security audit is to ensure compliance with relevant regulations, standards, and policies. ensures compliance. Let's say we have a bank, we have various regulations and policies that a bank has to follow. Let's say cardholder information. We do security audits to ensure that the bank is compliant with various regulations and even industry standards, such as the PCI DSS, which is the payment card industry standards. Our last method to approach, an approach that is employed to discover vulnerability, we have incidents response. So when it comes to incidents response, there is a very important step that is involved in the whole incident response process. The step is root cause analysis. Now, root cause analysis helps an organization to be able to know, to really dive into the cause of the particular incident. So this helps an organization when it comes to remediating that particular risk or incident that is involved, because such a discovery or such a vulnerability, let's say it was unknown before. So an organization has to do root cause analysis to ensure, to be able to know the cause and also to be able to also learn from that particular incident and mitigate it in a way that it should not occur in future. So since we have tackled approaches to discovering vulnerabilities, let me just pose a question. So what can be the limitations of these approaches? We have talked about vulnerability scanning. We have talked about manual testing. We have talked about security audits. And we have also talked about incident response. So what can be some of what can be some of the limitations of these methods to discover vulnerabilities? You can just engage in via our chat box. Yes, they may not be able to. Yes, they may not be able to identify newer vulnerabilities. Another reason. Yes. Yes. So apart from let me just call them conventional methods to discovering vulnerabilities, they have quite a number of limitations. So these traditional approaches have certainly some benefits, let's say some capital expenditure benefits, but however, they are considered passive. They have certain limitations. So the first limitation is the limited scope. They just focus on known vulnerabilities. So when you do scanning, when you do even those manual tests, you'll only be identifying known vulnerabilities. So newer threats and zero days will not be discovered in those conventional methods. Secondly, they are reactive in nature because organizations will react to the identified vulnerabilities rather than proactively preventing their occurrence. Third is the time consuming, especially those manual testing, penetration tests and security audits. They are very time consuming and they are also resource intensive. They require some specialized systems and they are very resource intensive, those processes. The fourth and very important process when it comes to those conventional methods to discover vulnerabilities is false positives and negatives. So these scanning tools may generate false positives and also false negatives. So an organization can have that false sense of security, knowing that maybe your security posture is good, and when they are just relying on a scanning tool that has not been fine-tuned to not give those false positives or false negatives. The fifth limitation we have is that it is very dependent on human expertise. So you can, those tests like security audits, manual tests, they require individuals who have been certified by those organizations to be able to carry out those tests. And so they are overly dependent on human expertise. Yes, they are overly dependent on human expertise, and that can be a challenge in the environment that we are living in right now. So we have looked at the conventional ways to discover vulnerabilities and also the limitations to those conventional ways. Now, this leads to threat intelligence and how we can be able to leverage on threat intelligence in our vulnerability management programs. So we'll start by defining threat intelligence. So threat intelligence is a domain in cybersecurity where teams leverage open source information to determine and prioritize threats to an organization. Sometimes it is also referred to as cyber threat intelligence. So how does threat intelligence, how does threat intelligence supplement or augment the vulnerability management programs that are employed in organizations? So first is to create alerts and prioritize remediation based on specific threats. The second is it increases detection and alerting for indicators of compromise. The third one, we have when we use threat intelligence, we can be able to apply mitigating controls to reduce the workload of vulnerability management. And also the fourth and very important point is that it allows organizations, especially those with vulnerability management programs, to focus on remediation, on remediating those systems that are at the highest risk of exploitation. So threat intelligence can significantly aid in discovering vulnerabilities within an organization's environment by providing timely. Number one, it has to provide timely. Number two, it has to provide relevant. And number three, it has to provide actionable information or intelligence. So threat intelligence has to be timely, number one. Number two, it has to be relevant to the particular vulnerability that we are talking about. And number three, it has to be actionable for us to be able to use it to, yes, to use it to our advantage as an organization. So before we go on how to leverage our threat intelligence within vulnerability management, we have to know the sources of threat intelligence. There are various sources of threat intelligence. I have narrowed down to 5 types. So the first source is open source intelligence. First source is open source intelligence. This is where we find we get to know. This is where we get to know information from public databases, news, some bulletins, and so forth, even social media. The second one is commercial organizations. We have organizations whose main name is to provide intelligence at a fee. So we have those organizations that provide threat intelligence at a fee. We also have in-house. Let's say from our security teams, we have our team of incident responders who have some various reports, recent root cause analysis, and also some assessments from in-house within our organization. We also have ISACs, which are information sharing and analysis centers. So these are centers which provide threat intelligence based on a technology called automated indicator sharing. So mostly these ISACs, or these information sharing and analysis centers, are for various specific industry groups. Let's say we have ISACs for the banking sector. We have ISACs for the insurance sector. So there are various, and to get such intelligence, you have to subscribe. They have their own requirements. So you have to fulfill all their requirements and then subscribe to their specific industry group, ISAC. The last one we have is the dark web. Now, dark web is mostly associated with cyber. Yes, it's mostly associated with hackers selling our information, selling all those things that maybe malware and also ransomware. But organizations have realized that they can leverage on the dark web to be able to know the tactics, the lingo that these threat actors are using, to be able to know which malware is trending, and how these threat actors are sharing these various tools. So organizations can also leverage on the dark web as a source of threat intelligence. All right. So before we proceed to types of threat intelligence, do we have any question? Sasha, do you have any question, or I can just proceed?
I'm not seeing any question on my end.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me proceed to types of threat intelligence. So we have various types of threat intelligence that are relevant to vulnerability management programs, which is just a bigger picture of vulnerability management. So within an organization, we have those processes, vulnerability management processes. But the bigger picture when it comes to vulnerability management in each organization is this vulnerability management program. So they also rely on these four main types of threat intelligence. The first one is technical threat intelligence. So technical threat intelligence refers to intelligence which can be in the form of IOCs, which are indicators of compromise, like attack vectors, how our system is behaving. We have also exploitable vulnerabilities in our systems, log sources, and also the domain information. So with this technical threat intelligence, it allows quick sharing and utilization between teams when it comes to these indicators of compromise. The second that we have is technical threat intelligence. Here is where potential attack vectors and methods of compromise used by threat actors. So when it comes to technical threat intelligence, this is where we get the TTPs, the tactics, techniques, and procedures that are employed by these threat actors. So it can include some non-bad IPs that have been flagged. We have also some known domains. We have trending malware, scanning patterns, and also some phishing attacks. This tactical threat intelligence helps an organization to fine-tune our security controls. Let's say we are using a particular vulnerability scanner. So when we have our own configuration for our scanner. So when we leverage on such intelligence like technical threat intelligence, we might be able to see how we can now fine-tune our scanning settings so that we can be able to find more vulnerabilities. So this is how we can leverage on tactical threat intelligence. We have the third one called strategic threat intelligence. So strategic threat intelligence is a high-level information for senior leaders. So it does not involve technical details. So strategic intelligence includes policies, regulations, media reports when it comes to social media. So strategic threat intelligence just helps leaders of organizations to make decisions and also encourage vulnerability management program, the action of a VMP. Our last type of threat intelligence is operational threat intelligence. So under operational threat intelligence, here is where we find information on threat actors' motives. So under operational, we have to narrow down to the motives of each actor, the method that they are using, and also their techniques. So it requires skilled threat intelligence analysts. So not just everyone can be anyone can be a threat intelligence analyst. It requires someone who has been skilled in that particular area to be able now to narrow down to various threat actors' motives and also methods. It focuses mainly on how attacks are being performed and not just what is being used when it comes to tools. Great. So how do you get started to integrate threat intelligence in our vulnerability management program? So the first thing that we have to do as an organization is we have to understand the four main types of threat intelligence and how each can be applied. The second step is we have to work closely with the threat intelligence team. This is a dedicated team that provides an organization with threat intelligence. Now we have to work closely with that team to be able to gather relevant data. Number three, we have to utilize various technical and tactical intelligence for most immediate benefits. So if we are getting if an organization wants immediate benefits out of integrating threat intelligence into a vulnerability management program, we have to implement technical and tactical intelligence. As the program matures, the organization can incorporate strategic and operational intelligence to be able now to supplement the benefits that are drawn from adopting technical and tactical intelligence. And now the final step is to continuously share information between teams to be able to improve prioritization. This is also very important that we continue to share. Security is a continuous process. So as an organization, we have to continuously share information between those two teams, be able to improve our prioritization. All right. So what are the steps that are needed or that are required for us to implement or to leverage on threat intelligence in our vulnerability management programs? So we have a series of steps which are implemented. The first one is we have to define the scope of threat intelligence. The first step is to define the scope of our threat intelligence. This involves gathering information. So we will start by collecting data from various sources. This can be open source, can be in-house, can also be partner-provided intelligence through those information sharing and analysis centers. Now, after we have gathered or collected the relevant intelligence that we now want to leverage on, we have to analyze such information. So number two is we have to analyze the collected data to identify the patterns and some useful information. So this will help us as an organization to understand our adversary. It will help us to understand their tactics and also the potential threat that these adversaries are bringing to our organization. The second step, after we have identified our scope, is to integrate the threat intelligence into vulnerability management. How do we integrate threat intelligence into vulnerability management? Number one, very importantly, is we have to cooperate or collaborate with people or teams. So when it comes to any vulnerability management program, we have people, we have processes, we have technology. Now here is where we implement, or here's where people are involved. So we have to ensure that the threat intelligence and vulnerability management teams, these two teams, we have to ensure that they work in sync, they work together, they work to ensure that we properly integrate the threat intelligence that we have received. So after collaborating, these two teams have to, in their collaboration, they need to coordinate communication and also the data flow between those two teams. The second process that is involved in integrating is the documentation process. So we have to create process documentation for how threat intelligence will be first gathered, prioritized, and also acted upon by that vulnerability management program. The third step in integrating or leveraging on threat intelligence in our vulnerability management is now we have to use the threat intelligence to enhance our vulnerability management. So this is where we use the real intelligence that we have gathered into our vulnerability management program. So what is involved in this process? So first of all, we have to prioritize our vulnerabilities. Yes, an organization can be able to get a lot of vulnerabilities, but the same have to be prioritized so that they can be acted upon in a, yes, they can be acted upon in a good way. So how do you prioritize vulnerabilities? First, it is based on criticality. As I've pointed out, I've pointed out that if a vulnerability affects all the aspects of the CIA trial, which is one of the pillars that we do use in cybersecurity, the CIA stands for confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So if a vulnerability affects all those three pillars, that vulnerability has to be remediated immediately because number one, it will lead to loss of confidentiality. Number two, it will lead to loss of integrity. And also number three, it will lead to loss of availability. So that is how we prioritize vulnerabilities. So this criticality is also based on a score called Common Vulnerabilities Scoring System, which is just a standard for us to be able to score various vulnerabilities as they are unearthed. So we use that CVSS, Common Vulnerability Scoring System. And also now in that particular CVSS, we have to look at the likelihood of the exploitation and also the criticality of that vulnerability. So this helps an organization to focus on remediation efforts on the most critical vulnerabilities. Now, the second process is to stay updated. So this means we have to update our technology inventory as an organization. Secondly, we have to ensure that our threat intelligence is not only timely, it should be also relevant and also actionable. So this will help to identify vulnerabilities in critical systems and applications. So the fourth step we will use to leverage our threat intelligence in our vulnerability management is by implementing active threat assessment. So how do we implement active threat assessment? We will implement it by identifying and reacting. So we have to conduct active threat assessments. Number one is in order to conduct active threat assessment, we have to observe, we have to identify the threats, and we have to react to the potential imminent threats. So this will involve systematic processes to address or identify threats and also respond effectively. So here you can employ various tools. A popular tool that is employed to systematically identify and respond on its own. We have the SOA tool, which is a security orchestration and automation and response tool. So with this tool, most of the incident response have been automated, and also some of the processes that are involved in incident response. So it is a good tool that is automated that will help an organization to not only react to various threats, imminent threats, but it will also proactively help us to continuously give us data enrichment and insights on various threat actors or adversaries that we are facing as an organization. Another step that is involved on leveraging threat intelligence is that we have to use that threat intelligence for proactive mitigation. So how do we use threat intelligence for proactive mitigation? We have to adopt various proactive measures. So we will use threat intelligence to proactively identify and address various potential security risks and vulnerabilities. So this approach only helps to preemptively detect and prevent security threats. The other measure that we can use when it comes to leveraging threat intelligence for proactive mitigation is context-aware prioritization. We need to be aware of the ecosystem that our threats are coming from, and therefore we need to combine various threat intelligence, and also we need to combine them with an up-to-date technology inventory. And we will focus now on addressing vulnerabilities in critical systems and also applications that are posing the highest risk to us as an organization. Another step that is involved to leverage on our threat intelligence in our vulnerability management program, we have to assess and mitigate those risks. So, under assessing and mitigating the risks, we have to conduct these risk management and risk assessments. So when it comes to risk management at a high level, risk management should help you to answer three essential questions. So these questions are, what are the threats? What are the vulnerabilities? And what are the impacts? So risk assessment answers these three questions. What are the threats? what are the vulnerabilities, and what is the potential impact. So using risk management, we can be able to identify potential risks to our organization, create plans for mitigating those risks, and also it will involve collecting information about threats, identifying the vulnerabilities, and determining potential impacts. Now, when it comes to risk assessment, we do have to conduct comprehensive, comprehensive risk assessments to identify the threats and the vulnerabilities. So this will help us as an organization to create more effective security measures to also be able to bolster our security posture as an organization. The final step when it comes to now leveraging our threat intelligence in various vulnerability management. So the final step is it will involve integrating the threat intelligence into the cybersecurity strategy. Now, for us to integrate our threat intelligence to cybersecurity strategy, we have to continuously engage with our leaders or these high-level documents that various organizations leaders are in charge of. We have to review our policies and our strategies. So if we do that, we will enhance our detection. So if we integrate threat intelligence into our cybersecurity strategy, we will enhance threat detection and vulnerability management efforts. And also as the top brass of the organization, they will be able to make informed decisions regarding security postures and effectively prioritize remediation efforts. It will also ensure resource optimization because we will use the threat intelligence to optimize our cybersecurity resources. It will also ensure that the resources are invested in the right areas of security infrastructure. So if we leverage or integrate threat intelligence into our cybersecurity strategy, those are what we stand to gain. When it comes to management and cybersecurity, they really, those technical teams, we really have to work in sync to ensure that even the resources are really invested in the right areas or even the tools that are involved. Yes. So in conclusion, by following these steps, we can effectively leverage threat intelligence to identify, assess, and mitigate vulnerabilities, enhancing your cybersecurity posture and reducing the risk of cybersecurity breaches. So cybersecurity professionals have to develop efficient and effective strategies to enhance security and address the increasing number of attacks and vulnerabilities that they face. So if we integrate our threat intelligence into various vulnerability management strategies, organizations can be more proactive. This is one of the benefits of integrating threat intelligence. So organizations will be more proactive and quickly and also efficient to identify and not only identify but mitigate those vulnerabilities in their environment. So that will, in the long run, reduce the risk of security breaches and also safeguard the assets, the data, and also the reputation as an organization. Yes, Sasha, do we have any question based on my presentation?
Thank you, Brian. I think we can open it up to everyone. So if you have any questions, we'll take them up.